Welcome back to another lesson from Karanko Codes. Today we're going to go over probably the most complicated part of Git, and that is the Git workflow. I've decided to make this its own video because I really want you to understand this concept. If you understand this concept, then really the videos moving forward are going to really make sense. I also hope that whenever you're watching the videos moving forward, that you can refer to this. If you find value in this video and want to keep seeing more like this, then please do me a favor and click the subscribe button down below and click the like button. That really helps the channel grow, lets YouTube know that you enjoy our content, and most importantly, you'll be notified of any upcoming releases to this channel. So what makes Git so complicated is that there's 4 different environments, and we're going to go over the 4 different environments, but first let's talk about the first and the last one. The working directory is going to be the easiest concept to learn because this is very similar to what you are used to right now. If you open up a folder and you see files that are inside of that folder, everything that you see is the working directory. These are files that you're actively working on inside your given branch. And so your working directory are files that exist inside of your branch and on your computer. Now, this is probably the first time that you're hearing the term branch, and don't worry about it. We'll discuss that further in our next video. So the next environment we're going to discuss is the remote repository. Now that's the second easiest to understand because those are all the files that live on GitHub. So if you were to go to a GitHub repository and you scroll through any files that are on any repository, those files all exist on the remote repository. So the third environment we'll discuss is the local repository. This is often referred to as the head, and it is your local copy of the remote repository. This environment contains the latest files since you last interacted with GitHub. This third environment is also the last place where files exist before getting pushed up to GitHub or getting pulled to your working directory. Now that we've talked about the other 3 environments, I hope that the second environment makes a little bit more sense. Now, the second environment is called the stage area, and this is sometimes referred to as the index. In this environment, you package files that you want to commit to the remote repository. You can add as many files as you want to this environment, but essentially this is where you group the files that you want to commit. We'll dive deeper into the stage area, but I want to give a quick example of how the stage area works. Let's say you want to make a change to a homepage, and the change consists of 4 files that need to be updated. You add all 4 of your files from your working directory to the stage area, and that is essentially what I was getting at, is where you group your files. Since we've defined and discussed a little bit about each environment, let's see how each environment works with one another. So like I mentioned previously, if you have a file or multiple files that you are ready to add to the stage, then the way you would do that is by using the git add command. And just a refresher, the stage area is the environment where you package files that you want to commit to the repository. Once you are ready to move all these files that are bundled in your staging area to your local repository, then you're going to want to do the command git commit -m and add a message. Keep in mind that the message that you type in here is going to be the message that displays on GitHub. Now, just a reminder that this local repository is the environment that contains the latest files since you've interacted with GitHub. So since we are offline at this moment and haven't connected to the internet, this is like your local repository being ahead of the remote repository. So now what we're going to want to do is push these changes over to GitHub. And the way that we push these changes is with the simple command git push. What this command does is that it moves everything that was bundled and prepared and sits in your local repository, and it's going to push all those changes to your remote repository that lives on GitHub. So there is a shortcut that you can do if you want to commit and add your files at the same time, and that would be with the command git commit -am, and then you add your message. And what that does is you're doing both the flag A and M, which is both your add and your commit with the message. Now, realistically, we're going to be using Visual Studio Code, and that's really going to make the Git workflow process a lot easier because they have a built-in interface that makes the Git workflow a little bit easier. But still, it's important that you understand the workflow process so you know what you're doing whenever you're having to push changes to your repository. And just the way that you push changes on the first example, you're going to push changes the exact same way with the command git push. Now, those were the instructions on how to push your code from your repository to the remote repository. So now let's talk about how we're going to get information, how we're going to get code from the remote repository down to your working repository. Now, typically you would just need to use the command git pull, and that's going to pull all the code from the remote repository down to your working repository. But let's talk about the in-between steps also. So there's going to be some instances where you'll need to pull the remote repository to your local repository. The reason why you'll need to know this command git fetch is because let's say you have a colleague that is working on a separate branch. The way that you can get their code is by using the git fetch command. So then you're getting the local data onto your local repository, and then you can pull the code that is from git fetch using the git pull. So the way that you would bring code from your remote repository to your local repository is with the command git fetch. Once you have pulled all the code from the remote repository and it is now sitting in your local repository, the way that you can merge all that code into your working repository, which would be your current branch, is with the command git merge. What git merge will do is it will find the differences between the two branches, and if there are no conflicts, it'll merge the files from both branches into one singular branch. If there are conflicts, then you would just have to go through and either accept incoming changes or accept your current changes. But essentially, the way that you would get that branch into your working repository is with the command git merge. So that's how you pull data from the remote repository to your working repository. But finally, if you are working with a fresh, clean project, if you don't have a working repository locally and you just want to grab the remote repository, then you can simply do that by using the command git clone. So I know this is a lot of information to take in all at once, and really I don't expect for you to remember all of this all at once. This will be something that you will get the hang of, and honestly you'll get the hang of it kind of soon, because these are commands that you're going to be using all the time. I will even mention in my next video on how these are commands that I use all the time. So stay patient and stay motivated, because you're doing great. Like I said at the beginning, this is one of the more complicated concepts to understand and get. So we'll see you next time.